All right, so we're going to go ahead and review how to solve equations when you have variables on both sides. So first, before we start, let's go ahead and review our terms and then the steps for how we're going to solve these problems. So my first term I have is variable. A variable is a letter or a symbol that represents an unknown value. So a lot of the times it'll be what we're solving for. So in my equation, 2x minus 6, that x is my variable. After variable, I have something called a constant. Your constant is a number without a variable. So in this case of 2x minus 6, the entire constant will be negative 6 because the sign is also very important. And then we have our coefficient. Coefficient is a number that's attached to our variable. So if we look at our example problem of 2x minus 6, it is going to be 2. So what we're going to do is first we're going to go ahead and perform opposite operations to move the variables and the coefficients to one side. Then we're going to perform opposite operations to move constants to the opposite side of the variables. We're going to solve, and then we're going to plug in our work and double check our answer. So this first one, I have negative 3 plus 5a equals 4a minus 10. My first step, we said, was to go ahead and perform opposite operations to move those variables and my coefficients to one side. So what I'm going to go ahead and do here is I'm going to subtract my 4a on both sides. After I do that, my 4a on this side is going to cancel, and I'm going to get negative 3 plus just 1a is going to be equal to negative 10. So after this, I need to go ahead and move my constant, which is going to be my negative 3, to the other side. In order to do that, I have to add 3 because it's the opposite of subtracting, or it's an opposite of a negative. Once that happens, my 3's are going to cancel, and I'm left with a equals negative 10 plus 3. That's going to give me negative 7. So now I'm going to double check my work. I'm going to plug it back in. I'm going to rewrite my problem. 4a minus 10. And then I'm going to plug in my variable. So instead of now writing a, I'm going to write negative 7. And when I do it, I'm also going to go ahead and use parentheses. Use parentheses to go ahead so that I make sure that my signs, positive and negative, don't get messed up. Okay, so now I'm going to solve using my order of operations. So it's just parentheses, exponents, multiplication, division, addition, and subtraction. So I'm going to go ahead and multiply because that's the first thing that I see on both sides. So I have negative 3, and then 5 times negative 7 is going to give me negative 35. And if I'm correct, that will be equal to 4 times negative 7. It's going to give me a negative 28 minus 10. So now all I'm going to do is going to go ahead and solve. Negative 3 minus 35 is negative 38. And then negative 28 minus 10 is also negative 38. So because my two answers are equal to each other, that does mean that a is going to equal negative 7. So let's go ahead and do one more. I highly recommend getting a pencil, paper, calculator, and following along with me as I do this one. So we have negative 16 plus 3n equals negative 8 minus 5n. All right, so like we said, my first step is to go ahead and move all those variables over. So in this case, I think I would like to add 5n on both sides. Once I do that, I'm going to get negative 16, and then 5 plus 3 is 8n is equal to negative 8, and then because I did the opposite operations, those cancel. So now I just need to make sure that my constants are on one side and my variables are on the other. So because I have a constant left over here, my negative 16, I'm going to move that over to my other side. Because when I move it, then I'm going to have something to work with. But if I were to move my negative 8, then I would have nothing to work with, right? So once I do that, I'm doing my opposite operation. Those are going to cancel. I have 8n is equal to negative 8 plus 16 is actually going to give me 8. So now I'm just going to solve and do my opposite operations. Because we are multiplying, we're going to go ahead and divide. These are going to cancel. And my n is going to equal 1. So if I'm correct, I should be able to plug this in, and then my answers will equal each other. They will be the same. So just rewriting it. And then plugging in my variable, remembering to use parentheses. All right, so now order of operations. Parentheses, I have parentheses, but there's no math going on inside of them. No exponents. I do have multiplication. So negative 16, and then my 3 times 1 is just going to give me 3, is equal to my negative 8, and then negative 5 times 1 is just negative 5. So now I'm just going to go ahead and make sure that I equal both sides. Negative 16 plus 3 is going to give me negative 13. And then negative 8 minus 5 also equals negative 13. So I know that I did this right, and I know that n is equal to 1. All right, we're going to go ahead and do 2 more. Again, I recommend just doing this one with me. Just it's good practice. So 1 minus 3x equals 3x plus 1. So my goal is to move everything to one side, including my variables on one side and my constants on the other. So I'm going to add 3 on both sides. Add 3x. Okay. Once I do that, my negative 3 is going to cancel out, and I'm left with 1 is equal to 6x plus 1. So now I want my constants on one side. So to do that, I'm going to subtract 1 on both sides. And I'm going to get 0 is equal to 6x because my 1's canceled. So now I'm going to go ahead and divide because I'm just doing opposite operations. And so if I'm correct, my answer is actually going to be 0. So let's go ahead and double check it, plug it in. 1 minus 3x is equal to 3x plus 1. So now instead of rewriting it again, I'm going to use my variable. Here I said it was 0. So 1 minus 3 times 0 should equal 3 times 0 plus 1. So again, following order of operations, right? So no parentheses. Well, I see parentheses, but there's no math happening, so I'm going to move on. I don't see any exponents. I see multiplication with my 3's and my 0's. So when I multiply, I'm actually just going to get 0 because any number multiplied by 0 is 0. So now I have 1 is equal to 1, and that is correct. So I know that x equals 0. All right, we got one more. So negative 12 minus 4b equals 4 minus 2b. I'm going to start by adding 4b on both sides. All right. Once I do that, my negative 4b is going to cancel out. And over here, I'm going to have a negative 12. And that's going to be equal to 4. And then 2b plus 4b, that's going to give me 2b. All right. So now I need to get rid of this constant. I need to move it on the other side. It's a positive 4, so I'm going to do negative 4 on both sides, and I'm going to get negative 16 is equal to, canceling these out, 2b. Oops. Come on. All right. So now I have negative 16 is equal to 2b. I just have to get this b by itself. To do that, I'm going to do the opposite operation. So because we're multiplying, I'm going to divide. That's going to cancel those out for me. And I'm going to get b is equal to -8, or -8 is equal to b. So if I'm correct, I should be able to plug in my answer, and both sides of the equation are going to be equal to each other. So I have -12 minus 4b is equal to 4 minus 2b. So now instead of rewriting b, I'm going to use -8. So -12 minus 4 parenthesis -8 is equal to 4 minus 2 parenthesis -8. All right, so now I'm just going to go ahead and use order of operations and solve. So I see parentheses, but there's no math happening inside of them. So I'm going to move on to exponents. I don't see any exponents. Multiplication, I see that I'm going to multiply -4 and -8. When I do that, I'm given a positive 32. And here I see I'm going to multiply -2 and -8, which is going to give me a positive 16. All right, so now -12 plus 32, that is going to give me 20. And then 4 plus 16 is equal to 20. So because they're both equal, that means that b does equal -8. So remember, when you're solving these, remember your terms, your variable, constant, and your coefficient. And then also remember your steps for solving these problems.